In a world where scorpions are the size of bears, humans have turned into Fantastic Four's The Thing,
it's clobbering time,
and robots are roaming around unchecked, is it really so hard to believe that aliens could be out there too? Well, with Fallout 3's Mothership Zeta DLC, we no longer have to ask ourselves the big question.
God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created?
Not that big question, but the other one. This was the 5th and final DLC to be released for Fallout 3, and oh boy, are there aliens in it. Now, confession time, I've never played any of the Fallout 3 DLCs before. I've heard about Anchorage, Point Lookout, and Broken Steel, but haven't actually gotten to experience them for myself. Why Mothership Zeta first then? Well, I saw it only had 3 quests and thought it'd be a nice appetizer into Fallout 3's afterlife. Aliens being the main focal point is a pretty big contributing factor as well. For this experience, I'm going to go through and tell the entire story of the DLC, as well as detail some of my trials and tribulations. Then, once that's taken care of, I'll share my overall thoughts on the expansion. What I liked, what I didn't like, what I would have changed, etc. If that sounds interesting to you, then sit back, relax, and let's talk about Fallout. The story begins pretty much as soon as the player exits Vault 101. Your Pip-Boy will pick up several different radio frequencies, and among them will be the Recon Craft Theta beacon. Giving it a listen, whatever's being transmitted is unintelligible. However, your Pip-Boy is able to track the radio frequency to a specific location, aka following the quest marker. It leads you to the northern part of the map, slightly west-northwest of Greener Pastures disposal site. If you're like me and don't have much discovered up there, it's a pretty far and dangerous walk over. However, after successfully making the trek to the marker and crossing over the hill, you'll see something magnificent. The radio transmission is actually coming from a downed flying saucer. Just outside the aircraft's interior is a being you've never come across before. It looks deceased, but you go closer to get a better look. As soon as you step near it, a ray of light shoots down from the sky and surrounds the lone wanderer. It acts as a tractor beam and begins to pick up your character. As you move your body, the struggle is hopeless. Whatever is reeling you in wants you, and it's going to have you. Welcome to Mothership Zeta. As the lone wanderer starts to regain consciousness, you hear the same sort of chatter that you heard on the radio station. Creatures identical to the one you saw at the UFO crash site surround you, and behind them appears to be heavy-duty surgical equipment. All of a sudden, lasers start firing, and as soon as they reach the lone wanderer, your character blacks out yet again. This time, as you wake up, you appear to be in a holding cell. You're greeted by someone named Soma, seemingly another captive of the creatures. The first conversation with her is a little vague, as all she really mentions is that all of your equipment is gone and that the two of you need to find a way out ASAP. The discussion gets interrupted though when, out of nowhere, Soma tells you to run for the wall.
You hear that? It's coming again. Get back against the wall now.
Doing so, you'll witness a giant claw move overhead and out of sight. Soma is relieved that neither of you were the targets, but you do witness it take a man to who knows where. It's clear that if you don't get out of here soon, you're going to end up dead, or worse. Chatting with Soma again, she comes up with a plan on how the two of you can escape. She says that you're worth more to them alive than dead, so if the two of you start a fight and make it look convincing, the creatures will come in. As soon as they do, it's time to act.
Alright, I'll hold back on you. Make sure you don't get too roughed up, okay?
Soma throws up her hands, and you do as well. If your character's like mine, and you've never touched the unarmed skill, this part is brutal and lengthy. Both Soma and I were throwing haymakers at each other, but our HP wasn't budging at all. I suppose that's a good thing for what was to come, or maybe it was the game's intention to not have any damage dealt during this portion. In any case, after some time, I spotted one of the creatures outside the door, watching Soma and I fight. In a matter of moments, they opened up the cell and rushed on in with their weapons drawn. Even though it was incredibly obvious, it's here that you get confirmation that they're referred to as aliens. They fight with new melee weapons called shock batons, and without any armor, they actually deal quite a lot of damage. Once you get a hold of one though, the battle becomes a lot easier, as now you're a force to be reckoned with. With the guards defeated, you and Soma can finally begin your escape. For this part, more aliens with more shock batons will periodically show up. Although, for the rest of the DLC, these specific Martians are relatively squishy and easy enough to deal with. Having a brief look around, the player is introduced to the alien recording logs. These can be found in specific consoles at certain areas, and they give a little bit of insight as to what's been going on around here.
What are we gonna do? They just threw me in the cell with you after they poked and prodded me, and now I just hope they won't kill us.
Just take it easy. If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead. They must need something from us.
Yeah, they need us for food or something. You saw that guy. He was all cut open, like he'd been butchered.
There's actually an achievement for collecting all 25 of them. It's widely regarded as one of the trickiest achievements to get in the game though. I'll explain why towards the end, but it's safe to say that for now it wasn't something I was interested in. Continuing down the corridor, you're also introduced to Mothership Zeta's new healing mechanics, the archway. Every time you pass through these ring-like structures, you're automatically healed to about 75% of your overall health. You'll know that the archway is ready for use if it has a red glow to its interior. It's not really a spoiler to say that the usual wasteland supplies are a little hard to come by up here. There are other items that offer healing effects, but the archways are the most efficient. So instead of healing on command a finite number of times, you have an infinite amount of heals, but only at certain points. For my time playing through this DLC, I actually quite liked the mechanic, and preferred it over scavenging for Stimpaks and Nuka-Cola. Through your explorations, you'll see both living and dead captives in some of the other holding cells. Most aren't in the mood to talk, except for one, Sally.
Blow it up. If you turn off the coolant, it'll get really hot and then explode.
Sally acts as your guide for the rest of the DLC. Due to her small and unassuming stature, she's able to frequently escape her cell and explore the ship. Hence why she's able to direct the player on where to go and what they need to do. It's here that she instructs you on how to progress through the ship, which is essentially by breaking it. There are power reactors, or generators, placed all around the premises, and blowing them up creates power shortages. No power means unrestricted access throughout the rest of the ship.
Thanks. Are you escaping?
With Sally free, she leads you back to the control room and slips behind some walls. This is frequently used as her plot armor for avoiding alien detection and allows her to speak with the lone wanderer at any given moment. With the doors open, Sally then suggests that you go all the way to the engineering core. Soma decides to stay back just in case things go sour. The only enemy in the immediate area is a lone alien, and lucky for you, he appears to be guarding all of your gear. In one of the nearby containers are your earthly possessions, so now you have access to your armor, ranged weapons, and supplies. Like mentioned before, 10mm ammunition, grenades, microfusion cells, etc. You won't be finding much of that up here, so recommended is to conserve your best firepower and use what's in surplus. Of course, that's not what I did. The next zone is the Steamworks, and this is where the real fighting begins. As I've said, individually or in pairs, the aliens are fairly weak opponents. However, their true strength lies in their numbers. More often than not, you'll encounter the extraterrestrials in groups. As with almost any enemy in this game, 3-on-1s are going to take a toll on your health in some way, shape, or form. It's pretty early on too that the player gets familiarized with the other side of the aliens' attacks, ranged weapons. Their rifles are called alien disintegrators, and their pistols are called alien atomizers. They both deal decent amount of damage for what they are, and take something called alien power modules as ammunition. Luckily for the player, these guns are abundant, and the ammo is littered all over the place. If you're solely reliant on ranged attacks, like my character, the game has you covered. In this next little area of the Steamworks, the player is presented with two more enemy types. The first is a support drone. They move slow and are only capable of producing physical attacks. They aren't too much to worry about. The second, however, is arguably the most challenging NPC in the whole DLC. They're shielded aliens, and they have incredible amounts of HP. Headshots don't do a lot of damage to them, and they have Olympic levels of aim. For my playthrough, they prove to be real problems. Luckily, they don't show up very often, but when they do, it's best to have an archway nearby. The occasional turret is also placed around the ship, and if they're not taken care of, will quickly take their toll on you. At one point, Sally tells you not to hurt some of the aliens, and when I first heard this, I was a little confused. As it would turn out though, a select few of them don red spacesuits, and similar to the red penny idea in football, those are the ones that she doesn't want you to hit. They're alien workers, and even though they pop up as red icons on the compass, they don't actually aggro onto you or target you in any way. They simply run for their lives and cower in fear. Killing them will give you bad karma. However, I ran into a few scenarios where my companions were constantly fleeing because of their presence. So, at select times, my hand was forced. There's a lot of clearing out to do in the Steamworks, and it's only just the beginning of the adventure. Once the hallways are safe for Sally to move through, you'll finally reach the desired destination of the engineering core. This is when you get to see the magnitude of the situation. If there was any room for doubt, it's 100% confirmed that you're no longer on Earth and are currently floating through the galaxy. It might not be as easy to go home as you originally thought. From here, Sally takes the lone wanderer to the side and shows them how to reach the top of the ship. It's a teleporter, but the only thing is that it's currently powered down. Getting another idea, she races through the rest of the engineering core and brings you to yet another side room. This area contains 4 filled cryochambers, people who have been frozen in time. Apparently, one of them was an astronaut, and you'll now need his suit to reach the top part of the ship. This is where the first quest for the DLC comes to an end, and the second one begins. Glimpsing at each frozen NPC, it's sort of looking like the YMCA music video. One of them is a cowboy, another's an astronaut, the third seems to be some sort of soldier, and the fourth looks like a samurai. Hitting the button and ending their slumber, 3 of the men step out of the pods, dazed and confused. However, the fourth, the astronaut, appears to have died. From here, Sally explains the rest of the plan. You're to take the spacesuit and step outside of the spaceship. To do that though, she recommends depressurizing that section of the aircraft in order to avoid enemy contact. The only way to do that is through destroying the 3 generators that are in the Cryolab, Hangar Bay, and Robot Assembly. This is arguably the most time-consuming yet action-packed part for the entire DLC. Each section has a different setup with various enemy arrangements and distinct gameplay mechanics. Sally also recommends asking each member of the village people for their aid in the upcoming tasks, so this becomes the official meet and greet moment. Soma even comes up from the holding area to join the siege. Starting with the samurai, Toshiro Kago, he only speaks Japanese, and regardless if you understand the language or not, the lone wanderer doesn't, so not much comes from this conversation. Next is the cowboy Paulson. He's very standoffish and distrusting of the player. Through context clues and pieces of the conversation, you learn that he's from the Wild West.
Do I really look that stupid, kid? This ain't a ship. I don't hear water, and I sure as hell don't feel us rocking.
In fact, it seems like all 3 of the men were abducted before the bombs fell, and the world was forever changed. The final NPC, Elliot, was a medic for the pre-war US Navy, and he comes across as a nervous wreck.
Aliens! I was taken by aliens! You must be the aliens trying to get into my mind. Well, that's not gonna work!
He tells the player that his unit was abducted as well, and that they're somewhere on the ship. It's a minor detail that comes into play later. The 3 companions you can use for this part are Soma, Paulson, and Elliot, and each of them will only follow you into their zone of expertise. For example, Elliot will go with you to the cryolabs as he believes he can revive people from their stasis and nurse them back to health. Paulson will follow you to the hangar bay as there's a lot of sharpshooting that needs to be done. Soma is a technical genius and can help you navigate through the confusing parts of the robot assembly. Starting with the cryolabs, this was probably the longest stretch of the quest. The first room isn't very eventful as there's only one enemy here and the teleporter is powered down. The next area though is where things kick off. You'll run into old foes like ghouls and raiders, while still needing to battle your way through the new ones. Elliot fights with an assault rifle and can hold his ground in most situations. He's someone who gets distracted by the alien workers, which again forces your hand to keep things moving. As you make your way through the labs, you'll see various NPCs frozen in the pods. You can wake them up, but most of the time it ends with you needing to use your resources in taking them down. At one point, you'll enter a viewing room and Elliot will recognize the test subjects on the other side.
What the? No. No! That's my squad in there. What the hell are the aliens doing to them?
In a panic, he frantically presses some buttons and manages to freeze and kill the aliens. In the next room over are the remaining 2 members of Elliot's squadron, and they're being held in the cryo chambers. In my case, I jumped the gun, released them from their pods, and Elliot got upset with me. The men raced out, fled the scene, and started to attack one another. I was really confused at what was going on, as now, my companion was running circuits, and his only friends were beating each other to death. With no other way to get Elliot out of his trance, I did what needed to be done and killed his men. From there, he stopped fleeing, walked over, and began tearing me a new one. I was terrified that he was going to turn on me or abandon our mission, but it didn't seem to have that much of a lasting effect. Continuing onwards, the 2 of you wander into the final zone for this portion, the cryo storage. It appears to be where the Martians are holding all of their future test subjects. People, animals, and abominations from pre- and post-Great War. From here on out, the rest of the area is a standard crawl. The aliens are abundant, and Elliot becomes nothing more than a punching bag. The enemies aren't difficult though, it can be blown through relatively quickly. At the end of some intersecting hallways is the generator. By deactivating the coolant systems, the main power tank itself becomes unstable and blows up. That wraps up your duties in the cryolabs, and the teleporter can now be taken to return to the engineering core. Retiring Elliot and moving on to the hangar bay, the next companion is Paulson.
Well, now you're speaking my language. Hell yeah, I'll come with you.
Now, in my opinion, Paulson is the best follower. It probably helps that this is the shortest section of the quest, but the man's brief, he's to the point, and best of all, he's incredibly deadly with his pistol. I'm talking one shot, one kill type of efficiency. Compared to my time with Elliot and Soma, I barely even had to raise my weapon. Like mentioned before, the hangar bay only has one zone that needs to be explored. The center holds a spacecraft that's being kept in place by poles that emit some sort of energy. The north, south, and west sides of the room contain overlooks with control panels, while the eastern side contains teleporters protected by force fields. Gaining access to the upper landings, Paulson will take care of the nearby aliens no problem. In fact, up until now, the defenses have been lackluster, and the generator is accessible via a small side room on the northern overlook. Attempting to gain entry, you activate the button and an alarm sounds.
I don't know what that sound is, but it can't be good.
Preparing for a fight, Paulson sets up by the doors and directs the player to overlook the control panel. This console actually controls the energy towers down below, and they emit shockwaves that send enemies flying. One blast is enough to kill an alien no problem, or to smash a support drone to pieces. I started off with paying attention to enemy movements and activating the corresponding pylon control. Then, I moved to the less strategic but arguably more effective button rotation. The enemies weren't fast enough to maneuver past the dormant towers, and it was practically effortless. There were a few stragglers who spawned in from the sides and snuck up through the hallways. However, Paulson was there to take care of them. I've never really felt like I could trust a follower like this with my protection, but Paulson had earned my respect over and over again. The last enemy I needed to deal with here was a shielded alien. Luckily, the towers were able to do a number on it, and a double tap with my laser rifle finished it off. Otherwise, we would have been in for a wild ride. With the enemy fighters scared off, the Lone Wanderer and Paulson can move into the back room and blow up the generator. A pretty easy and quick mission. With 2 down and 1 more to go, the cowboy is retired and your first acquaintance is picked back up.
Heck yeah. I can take apart and put together a protectron with my eyes shut. I'll go with you. Lead on.
The final zone is the robot assembly. After Soma tinkers around with a teleportation pad and gets zapped off to a separate section, all she can really do is provide recon and direct you on where to go.
Maybe I can turn off some other stuff too, and maybe I'll find a way back down.
This area is where the player is introduced to the Guardian drone, the more aggressive ranged counterpart to the support drone. It's also where you can acquire a new alien weapon, the drone cannon. It also uses alien power modules and acts as a grenade launcher. After maneuvering through some of the section, you'll get to a dead end. It's here that you can interact with an electronics panel and overload the assembly line. This blasts a hole in the wall and allows the player to continue onwards. The other side of the assembly contains some heavy defenses: support drones, guardian drones, and aliens. All at once, they can prove to be an overwhelming force. I personally had to slip back to the previous archway and hang around there while the enemies funneled in. Meanwhile, my very useful companion, Soma, was running a marathon across the rafters. Fortunately, once the resistance was taken care of, the rest of the mission was free. A safe and simple walk through the rest of the assembly hall will lead you to the generator. Blowing it up, you can then rendezvous with Soma and return to the engineering core. In the moment, all 3 generator crawls felt like lengthy and tricky tasks, but looking back, they're actually pretty simple and straightforward. Using the alien weapons and looting ammunition from their corpses makes for an efficient and endless rampage on the extraterrestrials. Meeting up with the rest of the crew and chatting with Sally, she says that it's time to don the spacesuit.
Oh, make sure you wear a spacesuit before you go out there, or you could die. Don't forget.
Entering the decompression chamber and activating the switch, alarms start blaring and machines begin turning. The doors on the other side open and you lay eyes on some dead aliens. Why exactly you couldn't have fought your way through this section is beyond me. There's probably a total of 5 dead aliens standing between you and the spacewalk. This fight seems like it would have been a heck of a lot easier to deal with. As a side note, during this portion, for added immersion and to show that you're wearing the suit, they really cranked up the Lone Wanderer's breathing. It sort of makes you hyper aware to your own breathing. In any case, once you're through to the spacewalk, you're exposed to the cold void of outer space. All you can do is run and jump as your weapon is currently inaccessible. This is a rather small part for the questline though, as all you need to do is find and interact with 3 exposed panels. Putting them all back into place activates the central pad, which then lifts you to the upper area of the aircraft. This is where the second quest ends, and the third and final one for the DLC begins. By pressing a button in this chamber, the pressure returns and the regular gameplay resumes. The next room over contains a teleporter pad, and turning it on brings over the rest of the crew. Everyone comes through except for Toshiro, who's nowhere to be found. Sally opens the nearby door, and together, all of you move into the next area. This is the observation deck, and the floor contains a glass viewing area which allows you to lay eyes on Earth.
Didn't think I'd ever see something like this.
That's really something.
A small detail that I love is just how disgusting they made the planet look. It's not the blue and green vibrant ball that you normally see satellite images of. It's the war-torn, irradiated rock that everybody calls home in the year 2277. Soon after Sally leaves to try and open the next door, a hologram of an alien appears in the center. It's clearly angry and talks in its own language for quite some time. After it disappears, you'll hear a loud noise and see a ray of energy shoot down towards Earth. Soma comments on how it's just a demonstration of fear, but remarks that the death ray should be shut down. The next room over is where Sally and the gang stay behind as the player is sent onwards to activate the teleporter. Believe it or not, the entranceway of the weapons lab is where I probably had the most trouble in the entire DLC. Between the turrets and shielded alien, I was dying over and over again. I didn't have any stim packs or Nuka-Colas left, and it took me a while to find the closest archway. The alien was ruthless, dead accurate, and strong. Finally, I saw that the closest archway was in fact right beside the thing, so I was able to stay the course and take it out. I'm telling you though, I must have been stuck on this part for more than 20 minutes. Since this is endgame territory, it feels like the number of aliens and drones are really ramped up. They're also positioned nicely around corners and up on the high ground to where it feels like the difficulty is increased. This was also the portion of the questline where the player experiences the highest volume of shielded aliens. I had to utilize the old archway tactic and kite this one all the way back to a whole other zone. It was also at this point that I encountered a common glitch for the Mothership Zeta expansion. Upon entering a room that's seemingly a dead end, the quest updated and said I had successfully disabled the death ray. I didn't know any better at the time, so I rolled with it and just continued along. It moved my current objective to killing the alien captain. and I had no clue that it skipped an entire portion of the quest. This was going to come back around soon and bite me in the back. Continuing with the here and now though, the next area is certainly not one that could be overshadowed by a glitch. It's called the experimentation labs for a reason, as locked away in some holding cells were these brute-like aliens. Destroying the generator and taking down the force fields, the mutants broke free and killed the workers. They're called abominations, and they appear to be shaped like bulkier aliens, but have more human-like features. They're easy enough to take down, but if you let them hit you, they deal some massive amounts of damage. Listening to the recording logs, you get the picture of how these things were probably created.
What are you doing to me? What's that thing? Get it out of me! It hurts! Please stop! No!
Once things are wrapped up here, you can return to the observation deck and see that the teleporter to the biological research area is now activated. Going through, the rest of the team is already on the other side, and Sally says to keep pressing further. Taking another teleportation matrix to the death ray hub, the way back gets closed off as the pad shuts down behind you. With no way out but forward, you continue your rampage, blasting, bashing, and cutting through the alien resistance. Soon, this leads the lone wanderer to the death ray control room, where it's actually time to disable the death ray. Due to the glitch from before, it took me quite some time to get here. The quest marker was no help, and there weren't explicit instructions on where to go and what to do. In hindsight, it seems obvious enough to just follow the path and explore around, but in the moment with no direction, it was a major roadblock. Disabling the death ray was straightforward, yet slightly time-consuming. 4 generators had to be destroyed, and several waves of aliens had to be disposed of. The generators can only be activated one at a time, and there was a brief cooldown period before the next one could be tampered with. Now, where the glitch from before truly did its damage was for this next part. My objective was to kill the alien captain. The quest marker was taking me someplace I couldn't get to, and the force field in the death ray control room wasn't going down. Because of this, I had no clue that that was my next destination. I searched and searched for ways to get out of here, but my character was pretty much trapped. Looking online for a solution, I saw some people had success with the console command move to QT. At the time, I wasn't familiar with what it did. Lo and behold, it teleports the player to the current objective. Since mine was to kill the captain, I ended up skipping a whole section and jumping straight to the bridge. The captain and some of its lackeys were waiting for me, and they began blasting away. Now, the skip section was minor and didn't have any story vital elements to it. It comprised of a small crawl through abominations, turrets, and more aliens. I didn't miss out on much, but there was unfortunately no way for me to go back there and see it for myself. In any case, this almighty captain was just as weak as its minions, and before long, all the threats were eliminated. Looting the captain's corpse, it had the unique weapon, Captain's Sidearm, which acts as a variant to the alien atomizer and shoots multiple blasts at a time. From here, Sally, Selma, Paulson, and Elliot funneled into the room. The alien hologram from before reappears, and not long after, another alien mothership pulls up in front of yours. It's clear that a galactic battle is now underway, and Sally, recognizing the control layout from one of her comics, puts everyone at a battle station. The player's job is to fire the death ray, which I thought was already destroyed, and monitor the ship's offense and defense. I didn't know it at the time, but the leftmost button diverts most of the power to the shields. This helps to protect the ship from incoming blasts. Pressing the middle button allows for equal focus on both shields and death ray power. Triggering the right button on the console transfers most of the power into the death ray, making for a stronger attack, yet weaker defenses. Like I said, I had no clue what that console actually did, and I thought it was used to aim the beam, so I was mostly switching back and forth between equal and offensive power. About halfway through the fight, there was commotion going on at the back, and it turns out Toshiro had caught up to the gang and wanted to be let in. Paulson was hesitant, but the rest of the crew insisted on opening the doors. All seemed well though, and the samurai helped the cowboy clear any alien invaders who came through those doors. Soon after his arrival, the power went out and a generator restart was needed. This was likely added for intensity's sake, as by now, your ship's shields are incredibly low. One more blast and it's lights out. Restarting it is as simple as pressing 4 buttons though, and before long, you're back in the fight. This little setback brought both ship's shields to 3 bars, and the hit-for-hit style of fighting resumed. On the 5th or 6th blast, the enemy ship was outmatched and their aircraft exploded. Before there was time to celebrate, Elliot comes over to the Lone Wanderer and informs you that a homing beacon was sent back down to DC. It acts as a teleporter and is how you can freely come and go from the mothership.
Oh, don't worry, I'll stick around up here and keep an eye on things.
Chatting with everyone before making any decisions, it's mostly filled with thank yous and farewells.
That's right. If it weren't for me, you'd be sitting in a holding cell or lying on some crazy operating table right now.
I'm not much for talking, so I'll get to it. I owe you. Without you, I'd be dead. Or worse.
Yeah, we won! I knew we could do it! I knew we could beat them!
Elliot, Toshiro, and Sally seem to want to stay on the ship, while Soma and Paulson want nothing more to do with it. At the back of the captain's quarters is a teleporter that sends you back down to the wasteland. Taking it, you're dropped off where you were initially picked up. The UFO crash site has been cleaned, and all that remains is the homing beacon back to the bridge. Upon returning to the ship, Soma and Paulson are gone for good, leaving the other 3 to look after things. With that, thus officially wraps up the Mothership Zeta DLC storyline. Unfortunately for this expansion, the post-ending content is really lacking. You can go back to the bridge, have small discussions with Sally and Elliot, as well as explore some of the engineering core, steamworks, and holding cells, but that's really it. There's no way to reach any of the labs, the robot assembly, or the hangar bay. The spacewalk is blocked off, and there's no access to the death ray control room. Anything you missed in those areas is now unobtainable. So if you're like me and couldn't get into the weapons room that contained the MPXL Nova Surge, the second best energy pistol in the game, you're SOL. If you were going for the Alien Archivist achievement and attempted to collect all 25 recordings, then your journey was over. There's a lot of discourse online about this, but to be honest, Fallout has always locked the player out of certain choices and areas based on story progression. It's literally how the main questline ends, so I didn't mind it all that much. The occasional alien pack can be found lurking in the engineering core and previous areas. This likely acts as a way for the player to acquire more alien power modules in order to provide ammunition for their Mothership Zeta based weapons. So now, what did I think of this DLC? Well, I've read some opinions online, and I sort of agree with their general ideas. At times, the questline felt like more of a chore than a fun adventure. It felt like I was being bossed around by Sally or Soma. Each time they would tell me to go here and do this, or go there and do that. It was essentially fixing a problem by encountering another problem, i.e. disabling the death ray via Soma's command, or activating teleporters via Sally's command. Due to the hostile nature of the ship, its layout, and certain requirements needed, I never really felt like exploring. Albeit, there isn't a whole lot more to see than what you're essentially forced to go through for the quests. Unused footage includes me searching through the Cryolabs and Hangar Bay for points of interest, but I never found any. Perhaps it was that early on experience that deterred me from wanting to adventure through the rest of the unknown areas. In terms of enemies, I thought the aliens were fine, even though they never really get changed up or vary too much. Same thing with the support and guardian drones. If anything, they could have added the abominations in earlier to the questline to have a little more variation with the fights. I do understand though if this was done to not confuse or overload the player with information. The one character I expected more from for this DLC was Toshiro, the samurai. Now, I did learn after the fact that there's a whole miscellaneous quest that involves retrieving his katana from the maintenance level. The player can then choose to hand it back over to him or keep it for themselves. Either way, there seems to be no love lost. Even if you don't find it, he ends up retrieving it himself, and that sort of voids the whole previous part. He can then be killed for the blade and armor. I guess if you're role-playing as a good character, you wouldn't want to go through with this option, but if you're like me and just want the best possible experience, it works just fine. I understand that as Abduction shows that people from all over the world at different points in time were taken, like Paulson, but story-wise he really didn't provide much else. I thought the end segment of the questline was fine, but for the final battle between the ships and taking out the captain, those moments were pretty lackluster to me. Now, I did skip a whole segment to go and fight the ship's leader, so that doesn't help. My view of things was slightly skewed. However, I'm just surprised that they didn't make the captain an overpowered shielded alien, or at least a variant of some kind. In the moment, I was probably happy that they didn't go in that direction, but looking back, the captain fell quicker than some of the other alien lackeys. And for the ship battle, maybe it was just a me issue, but in the moment, I had no clue what was going on. The console wasn't really explained, there isn't much of a feedback response if you're doing the right thing, and the other ship just kind of blew up out of nowhere. I feel like the development team could have done a better job at explaining what the console did and how the fight was going. Next, I wanted to talk about the overall layout and design of the ship. I think for the thoughts, feelings, and emotions portrayed by both the aliens and humans, the aesthetic worked fine. A cold, bright gray atmosphere with advanced technology placed everywhere. Rooms and corridors that are meant to confuse and scare the player. For me personally, I would have liked to have seen a little more variation for the design in some of the zones. The first few areas did a great job at this. The Steamworks, Cryolab, Robot Assembly, and Hangar Bay. All of them presented a unique look and feel to their respective purposes. Beyond that though, the Weapons Lab, Experimentation Lab, Death Ray Hub, Biological Research Area, etc., they just all felt like the same thing to me. It didn't get me excited or curious for what was coming up or what new discoveries I was about to make. They sort of acted like stepping stones which were used to get to the more interesting parts of the ship. Overall, the story wasn't bad. It only consisted of 3 quests and realistically took me less than 2.5 hours to beat. The pacing was fine, but the events didn't really keep me on edge or have me excited to see what was coming up next. Something like a scripted character death could have made things more interesting, or even a betrayal of some kind. Maybe Toshiro, Paulson, or even Sally could have served a bigger purpose. Maybe one of them could have been an alien in disguise. Maybe they were traitors to their kind and wanted to help the humans flee. This could have created distrust and tension amongst characters like Paulson and Elliot. There are a lot of different ways the development team could have spiced things up. All in all though, in terms of story for the alien side, they really didn't flesh it out all that much. Now, let's talk about what I really liked from this DLC. The introduction was excellent. Discovering the aircraft, slowly being abducted by aliens, waking up on the operating table, it was so cliche, but honestly, sometimes cliche is the most fun way to approach things, especially when you're dealing with aliens. Speaking of which, the design, appearance, sounds, and weapon choice for the Martians was everything I could have asked for. Again, it's the more stereotypical design that we see in pop culture, but for a game like Fallout 3, I think it's the best way to go. The same goes for the abominations as well. A human alien mutant creature not only adds a new enemy to face off against, but it creates a new fear too. It shows the player that if you waited longer to escape or simply weren't successful, this could have been your fate. For all we know, one of these things could be your offspring. The aliens did do some tests on you in the beginning, if you know what I'm saying. The new weapons for Mothership Zeta were a privilege to use. Of course, it's not just the alien atomizers, disintegrators, or drone cannons. There's also Toshiro's katana, the captain's sidearm, Paulson's revolver, and the Nova Surge 2. I'm a sucker for new, unique gear, and even the basic alien weapons are leagues better than what's left down on Earth. I really enjoyed the inclusion of Paulson, Elliot, and Toshiro. I've already said my piece on Toshiro, but the other two were unique enough from one another and had completely differing personalities. Paulson was the hardcore, stone-cold, dry, standoffish cowboy who liked shooting things. He was a hard man to get through, but once you did, you could see his more humane side. In the beginning, Elliot was a nervous, paranoid wreck who wasn't capable of doing much fighting, but he did have some great medical expertise. In the end, he proved himself a brave fighter when he helped take down the enemy ship. I also liked Sally and Soma's characters. I thought Sally's complete knowledge of the ship was a little too good to be true, and there was a twist coming, but I was wrong. I understand though that it was the plot's way of directing the lone wanderer through the ship and showing them where to go. Soma acts as the other Wastelander in the equation, and I'm assuming her inclusion was so that someone could repair your gear and offer insight into the ship's electronics. A plot point that took me by surprise, but a welcome one, was not everyone leaving the aircraft in the end. I thought for sure the vessel was going to be emptied, but more than half of the party opted to stay behind. It makes sense too, because when you think about it, is being stranded on a spaceship that much worse than going back down to the war-torn, irradiated Earth? Paulson, Soma, and even Elliot could probably manage down there. However, it's a good idea that maybe Toshiro and Sally stayed behind. Sally's stature and knowledge is more suited for the airship anyways, and Toshiro's communication barrier and unique set of armor won't do him well down there. Overall, I'd say I had a decent time playing through this DLC. I didn't like it more than the main story, and I doubt I'll like it more than the other DLCs, but seeing as how it was the first bit of Fallout 3 I've touched in a while, it was a nice way to get back into the stride of things. I'd love to know your opinion on Mothership Zeta down below, and until next time, keep on adventuring.